Chapter 12, Part 2. In this video, we are going to be looking at personality revealed through interpretation. Okay, so how do we interpret the world around us? We'll be looking at Kelly's personal construct theory and locus of control and learned helplessness. Locus of control and learned helplessness you've very likely heard of before or be familiar with. Personal construct theory might be a little newer. So let's get started with that. Kelly, name, important to know. He played a key role in establishing the cognitive tradition of in personality psychology. He believed that all people are motivated to understand their worlds. That's why you hear so much when they're talking about Kelly's personal construct theory. He thinks of humans as scientists. Okay, we're always attempting to understand and predict, control events, understand our world, put things in order. Okay, it's important for us to find meaning in things and make sense of things. So we're like perpetual scientists. There are many different types of constructs, but Kelly's is focusing on personal constructs. So constructs, they're like concepts. Okay, they're what people use to interpret and predict events. They're not really conscious. Okay, they're like lenses, the way that you see the world. Okay, so people have key constructs that they habitually apply in interpreting their world, particularly their social world. Because of this, we all have unique interpretations of the world. So personal constructs are developed through experience, and it's how we see the world. So, for example, it gives the example in text. What do you tend to notice when you meet a person for the first time? Personal constructs, they tend to be bipolar. Okay, they're either one thing or the other. So either somebody is athletic or by default they are non-athletic. Okay, it's binary. They are intelligent versus unintelligent. They are attractive versus not attractive. So when you meet somebody, what are the things that you notice about that person? Okay, that is sort of indicating what are the important personal constructs that you have for categorizing people and making sense of people and who they are and what they're about and what their value is, all of these things. I found a couple of examples. If one person believes that happiness is about how they feel in the moment, and someone else believes that true satisfaction comes from being grateful for things they already have, they each have different personal mental constructs. So a construct like happiness, what is happiness? You will have a different belief about what that is than somebody else. Here's another one here. If I say I wish I could cover these things up. If I say a large black dog, so some people are going to say, oh, he's a dog that needs to be loved and cared for. You can play with him, not going to harm anybody. It's a dog. Whereas somebody else might come and say, oh, a large black dog, it's scary, stay away, they're dangerous. That is their construct of a dog. A black dog, probably a large black dog. Another one, to sacrifice in relationships, say, sacrifice. Some people are going to have the belief or construct that sacrifice is love, and that's what you need to do. And some people are going to believe that sacrifice is stupid and you shouldn't be giving up what you think is important. Personal construct, another one, which I just experienced. Say, disturbing others or noise. Okay, my personal construct for noise, like when there's several people around, is respect for quiet, respect for, other people may be doing things and you should keep your, noise down out of respect. Whereas other people have no problem being loud and banging doors and crashing plates around and, doing different things. They don't have a construct of what morning quietness should be. Okay. There's all sorts of different constructs for things, ways that you see things, ways that you believe in things. Personal construct around competition. What is your view of competition when I say that? Mine comes out as happy, positive, fun, yay, whereas other people's come out as negative, competitive, somebody losing. So that is what I mean by constructs, and we all have different lenses. In the chapter, it does talk about corollaries of personal construct theory. What these are like rules. And you're not expected to know all of these, okay, but you are expected to understand it. So, for example, these are the different rules on the side here that have to go with personal constructs and how we use them. So, construction. Because repeated events are similar, we can predict or anticipate how we will experience such an event in the future. And the example of this is, if a man's mother has given him a birthday present for the last 30 years, his prediction will be that he receives another present from her on his next birthday. So that is our construct and around this situation. And construction is the rule, is that repeated events tend to repeat, obviously, so we can predict. Individuality is another corollary of personal construct theory. What about constructs? Does it say individuality? People perceive events in different ways. Organization. We arrange our constructs in patterns according to our view of their similarities and differences. Let's go down here. Experience. We continually test our constructs against life experiences to make sure that they remain useful. So as scientists, we are continually evaluating our constructs to make sure that they are still correct. Make sense? Okay. I have a video here. This outlines a little bit more clearly about Kelly's personal construct theory. It's 8 minutes long. Once it hits around 5 minutes, it goes past a general overview of the construct theory and starts to get into it more deeply. My suggestion is just to watch the first 5 minutes. It's just hearing it from another voice, another perspective, sort of summarizing everything that we've talked about here. But I did find it helpful because it's a little hard to get your brain around. I found it originally a little hard to get my brain around what all of this meant and how it goes together. Another piece about Kelly to know is that when he came out with this, he was a little bit ahead of his time. Back then, that was behavioralism. And he was coming out with this new way that people constructed their reality and evaluated the reality. It was a beginning of the cognitive revolution, really, right? Oops, go man. So he was ahead of his time. He was considered postmodern before postmodernism became a thing, which it is now, right? Postmodernism, it's an intellectual position grounded in the notion that reality is constructed, that every person and every culture has a unique version of reality and none is better than the other. So again, this was huge back then. Like I said, they were into like behavioralism, stimulus response. There was an objective reality out there and we were just reacting to our experience with it. And Kelly was one of the first ones that came out and said, no, there is not an objective reality. Well, there's not really an objective reality. We create that. Each person creates their own version of it in their heads. Fundamental postulate, a person's processes are psychologically channelized by the ways in which they anticipate events. Personal constructs serve to create each person's reality. So my reality is very different from yours. Yours is very different from the person who, sits 3 seats down from you in class. Everybody's reality is different. Again, just sort of reiterating that Kelly's theory states that humans are very much scientists. Primary motivation is to find meaning in life circumstances and events and use this meaning to predict and anticipate future events. It's very important that we interpret what is going on and make sense of the world around us all of the time. And if we can't, we get anxiety. That's where anxiety comes up in personal construct theory. If things don't make sense, if our constructs are not working, and if they're not working, things are very confusing, right? Have you ever been in a situation where somebody does something or there's a stream of events and you're just like, what the heck is going on? Like, I don't understand this at all, right? Your constructs are failing you. It's not making sense, right? It is very, very distressing. So how do they fail? They fail if they're too rigid and impermeable to new experiences. If you have a personal construct around something and it's rigid and it's not moving, and then you come up to a new experience and it doesn't fit, and you're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? This doesn't fit my construct and I don't get it. They need to be a little bit malleable. They need to be able to move a little bit because life's always changing. So the example they give in the text, empty nest wife wants to get a job. Yeah, so she stayed home all of her life, kids move out, and all of a sudden she wants to get a job. The husband has just gone the last, 40 years thinking that a successful marriage is where he's working and she's not, and she's happy and she's taking care of the house. And this is how his world makes sense. Okay, so all of a sudden she wants to get a job. And he's like, what the heck is going on? This makes no sense. This does not fit his construct of their relationship, of their successful marriage. Everything's out of whack. Okay, so he would experience anxiety. The opposite of that is if the personal construct is too permeable. Okay, you can apply it to any situation. So if it can apply to anything, it's not very helpful, right? It doesn't help predict things because it's too loose. Construct system in trouble when person starts having experiences that they do not understand. Yeah, so anxiety. What they're talking about here, commonality, corollary, it's a hard word to say. What they're saying is that if two people have similar construct systems, if you have a similar construct system to somebody else, you can appear to be very different from that person on the outside or in different ways. But if you have similar construct systems, you will interpret the world in a very, very similar way, and you are likely to have a very good relationship with that person because you get each other on a deep, deep level. You get the way that other person thinks. You get the way that person makes sense of the world, right? So Kelly's construct theory, part of the cognitive revolution. So yes, in the 50s, 60s, 70s starts cognitive revolution begins, which is, very prominent now. Next part is locus of control. So this is just sort of a natural progression of this cognitive revolution where things went. So locus of control describes one's interpretation of responsibility for events. So when you're trying to make sense of the world, like you are here, do you attribute events and things that happen outside of your control, or you had control over it, right? When you see anyone in any situation, imagine that you're just seeing anybody or yourself in any situation, whether it's good or whether it's bad. Do you think they're there because they did something to get there, or they didn't do something to get there? Or are they there because it's bad luck or fate? So your answer reveals your stance on locus of control. And again, this is not something that you consciously really do. Unless you make it conscious, right? So if you're the type of person who believes that you are very much in control, you make things happen, okay? Like you're in school right now, you got yourself into school, you possibly have a part-time job and you're making that work even though it's really, really hard, and you're managing your time and you're doing decently in school, and you're doing all of this is happening because you are making this happen. That is internal locus of control. External locus of control would be when things happen and you blame the outside world or luck, or things are happening to you, right? So you did very, very well on a test. I got lucky. You failed a test. Well, the professor wasn't very fair. You're overweight, not feeling good about yourself, feeling unhealthy. Well, I don't have time because I have to work all the time. Or this is sort of just my body type. Or I don't have time. I don't know. Reasons outside of yourself that you make up why you can't go for walks, or you can't take control or responsibility for your situation and do something, make something happen. Okay? So, external, generalized expectancies that events are outside of your control. Locate responsibility externally. It's fate, it's luck, it's chance, it's other people. They all did this to you, or you're at sort of a victim, right? Like things are happening to you. Internal locus of control. That is generally believing that things in your life are within your control and you are responsible for your own major outcomes. It doesn't mean that bad things aren't going to happen. It's just that when bad things happen, you assume that it's up to you to get yourself out of this situation, and you take charge, and you change things to a certain degree, of course, right? So the concept of locus of control came out of Rotter's work developing social learning theory. That's where it came from. So Rotter was first. He's working on learning theory, and what he found, it's this expectancy model of learning behavior. So if you're looking at how people learn things, what he discovered is that learning depends on the degree to which a person values a reinforcer, right? So if you're studying, if you really value grades and you want to get an A, you get an A. That's a big reinforcer. If you don't care about grades and you just want to get a 60 and pass and get out, right? That's not a big reinforcer. Some value praise, appreciation, some do not. People appreciate, different rewards are differentially valued and motivating to different people. And what this came to is that people differ in their expectations for reinforcement. So some believe they're in control of the outcomes, and some people believe they're not in control of the outcomes. And that's where it came to control and not control, external and external. So, expectations of consequences of being at work. So Sally believes that assertiveness will be rewarded with a promotion. She's at her work. She thinks if she's assertive, states her opinions, she is going to be acknowledged. They're going to value that, and they're going to give her a promotion. Whereas Ed believes that they're not going to like that. They're more likely going to like if he just follows what he orders, does what he's supposed to do, and in that way he's going to get a promotion. Right? So the same behavior with different expectations of consequence. Generalized expectancies. Well, that's what it sounds like. Transfer of belief of whether or not they have the ability to influence events. Transfer of locus of control to new situations. Right? It's just generalization in the way psych uses that word. Recent research focus. Okay, so they're not really looking at expectancy anymore. Not necessarily specifically external and internal locus of control. Recent research focuses more on specific expectancies. So some people are internal in some parts of their lives, and some people have external in parts of their lives, right? So they're looking at when do people use specific attributions, right? External or internal. So 3 examples, research areas, expectations for health. So they're looking at whether people believe their health depends on their own actions or do they have any control over that. Academic outcomes, belief whether their behavior in the classroom is going to help get good praise, help get good grades. What impact do they believe their behavior is going to have? And then marriage, belief of whether actions can influence the quality and outcome of marital relationships. Okay, so all of it is what do they believe in terms of will their actions make a difference, or is it more external? Or they don't have control? Result in all areas. People with internal locus of control tend to be more active in taking charge. They take responsibility for outcomes greater than externally oriented individuals. Summary sort of statement. Internal locus of control is more adaptive. In some situations where one does not have control, so people with a high locus of control, what happens when they're in a position where they have no control? Like say they have a high internal locus of control and then they're in a bully situation, or they're at work and they're in a position where they don't have control. Okay, those situations are more stressful for them than other people. Those situations are significantly more stressful than people who have an external locus of control, which makes sense, right? You're used to having your own, you believe that you have control in different situations, and all of a sudden you don't for some reason. So yes, of course, you're going to feel very stressed. Finally, learned helplessness. This, again, you would have seen in your intro psych class and probably in some other classes that you take. It also has its roots in learning theory. It started out here with the dog, right? So the dog gets a shock, so the dog jumps to this side. No shock. And then the shock and the dog jumps over. So originally the dog is learning that you can escape if you jump. But then they shocked both sides. Very sad for the dog. The dog learned very quickly, even when they jumped, it made no difference. They were still getting shocked. So eventually they learned that nothing they do makes any difference, so they give up. Okay, so that's learned helplessness. Animals, including human, when subjected to unpleasant and inescapable circumstances, they become passive and accepting of the situation. In effect, they learn to be helpless. And then people generalize their learned helplessness to other situations and other problems. They learn that their efforts do nothing, so what's the point? Whatever. Some research around this. They're talking about Seligman's research. So they gave humans problems to solve, and there was a loud, like pulsating noise in the background. So they're told if they solve the problem, the noise is going to stop. Right? So that's what they had to do. So they had these problems. One group had problems that had solutions, and one group had problems where there was no solution. Okay? So one group was going along, giving the answers to the problem. It was correct, so the noise stopped. They were rewarded for their efforts, and the noise stopped. In the other group, they are doing the problems, but they can't figure it out because there is no solution. Therefore, it is inescapable. The noise just keeps happening. What happened, of course, even with humans, learned helplessness. Finally, the group without solutions just gave up, and they just give up, right? There's no point. Then they take them to a new situation. So they're looking at, does it generalize to other situations? So participants were told that the researchers, they're simply interested in how they solve the problems. And there's not a lot of detail in the study, but I wish there was a little bit more. But the point of this here is that learned helplessness participants from the previous study did not try, they gave up earlier. So the group here that had no solutions in the new situation, they didn't really try the problems. They just sort of gave up. Generalized their experience of helplessness from one situation to another. So today, researchers are looking at how people interpret and explain the causes of events. So we know learned helplessness is a thing. So past that, what's next? We look at explanatory style. Focuses on the thoughts a person has that may lead them to feelings of helplessness. The tendency of some people all people, to use certain attributional categories when explaining the causes of events. So 3 broad categories of causal events. When you're making up a reason / excuse for why something happened or is happening, there's going to be 3 parts. There's external or internal. Is it because of what I did or the universe did it to me? Is it stable or unstable? So if it's stable, it means it happens forever and ever and ever and ever. It's always happening. Or unstable, it was just this one time. Or happened once. Happened once. And then global or specific. It happens everywhere. Or it only happens here. Just hear this one. I'm going to take out this one time because that makes it confusing. I want to say or just here. Global or specific. Okay? So what they do is when they're looking at a problem, what do you do? Or what does a person do? Is there a reason for something external, unstable, and specific, or internal, unstable, and global? So one of these in each makes you either pessimistic or optimistic. So pessimistic, negative, very negative. They're going to say, emphasize internal, stable, and global events for causative events, right? Associated with feelings of helplessness and poor judgment, and it's stable over time. Okay, so I did this, it happens all the time, and it happens everywhere. Whereas optimistic, a more positive view of this, is that, okay, so what happened? It was out of my control. It doesn't happen very often, and it's only in this situation. It makes it more controllable, right? And this is associated with well-being and beneficial in many areas of life. So I've got an example here. So you break up with your partner. And these are the outcomes: depression or successful coping. So you break up. Stable is, I'll never get over this. I'm going to die. Global, without my partner, I can't do anything right. I can't breathe. My life is over. Everything is a mess. Internal, the breakup was my fault. I did this. Equals depression. Then the more optimistic. It's temporary, right? Unstable. This is hard to take, but I'm going to get through this. This is just temporary, and I'm going to feel better, by next week or next month or whatever you do. Specific. I miss my partner, but thankfully I have a lot of friends. It's not global. My whole life is not falling apart. I have friends. I have family. I have great, what do you call each other? Colleagues in my class, classmates, right? And then external, it takes 2 to make a relationship work. It wasn't just me, right? And this one you're saying it's all your fault. Here it's like, well, there was 2 of us in there. It just wasn't working. That makes it external. And then this is a more successful coping way to think. Okay? So this is about how you attribute blame or how you make sense of different situations, okay? Do you say that they are external or internal, stable or unstable, or global or specific? And there's an example there. And that is the end of part 2. So, Kelly's personal construct theory, locus of control, learned helplessness, we've covered that. So I will see you in the next video where we look at personality revealed through goals.